Shubham, you're able to hear me, right?
Yeah.
I'll
So
turn it on in a second. When we're going live, I'll turn the video on.
yeah. So we are live now, Maggie. So
Okay.
you can turn the video. Yeah.
I'm just going to download it from my Google Drive because in case the internet speeds are low, I'd rather have an offline copy of it than increase the bandwidth.
I'll turn.
All right, Meghna. So all right. So good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining in for this webinar on ideation. So before we get started with our webinar, I'd like to introduce Meghna, who's the co-founder at CreatyWatch, and we have Maggie from AnitaB.org. So I'd like to invite Maggie to quickly just take the audience to the GHCI hackathon. So over to you, Maggie.
Thanks, Shubham. And thanks, Kilanza, for hosting this wonderful webinar and the Codeathon. Everyone, welcome all of you to the GHCI 20 Codeathon. GHCI 19 Codeathon was a great experience for many of the students who participated. We hope we are able to bring the same value to you this year as well. So GHCI stands for Grace Papa Celebration India. It's the largest technology conference for women in all of Asia. And it's a true celebration of women in technology. We have women technologists participating from all over the region over a few days of all technical topics that are being discussed. And this Codeathon is going to be a special addition to that because we are opening this up specially for Tier 2, Tier 3 city students who are studying computer science and electronics and information technology related courses. This is specially open, exclusively open for women students from those areas, because we really want you to get the benefit of learning hands-on skills on creating solutions, information technology and computer science-based solutions for real-life problems. And through that, find great opportunities with great technology companies out there. That's the reason why we have done this. To do a little bit of a brief, GHCI is a conference that's run by anitab.org. Anitab.org is a not-for-profit headquartered in the US. We've been in India for 10 years. This is our 11th year. And we started with a 300 big conference, and now we are looking at hosting almost 10,000 audience this year in the last week of October. And it gives me a lot of pleasure to welcome you to this Codeathon and hope you enjoy the learning experience. And I want to leave you in the very able hands of Meghna to conduct this first webinar, teach you some skills that you can really use in this Codeathon and get the best use out of it. Over to you, Meghna.
Yeah, hi everyone. Hope you guys can hear me. My name is Meghna, and I'm the founder and CEO of CreatyWatch. CreatyWatch is a technology company, and we use a lot of artificial intelligence and deep technologies to curate insights on private companies. We are a fintech company, and we work with leading banks and financial institutions to help them reach the underbanked. I'm really happy to be a part of this webinar initiative and talk to all of you bright young women today, and hope that some of the insights that I'm able to share with you on ideation will help you with the hackathon and the codeathon that you're going to participate in, and would also probably some of these insights can also be useful if there are many budding entrepreneurs amongst us here today who are thinking about starting their own business in the future. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Give me a second. Can everybody see my screen? So today I'm here to talk to you about ideation, right? So what is ideation? Right? People would usually be confused thinking ideation is the beginning of the process to build a product or prototype a product. But actually ideation is a third step in actually building a product. It's just before you design minimum viable product is when you ideate your product. And there's some important things that you need to understand and a process that you need to do before you actually get to this process of ideation. Ideation is really important because with the process of ideation, you'll be able to explore multiple ways of solving the problem that you want to solve. And if you during ideation is when you explore these multiple ways, you're able to kind of enhance the learnings that you've already done in the initial steps before ideation, so that it'll help you build a minimum viable product. So ideation is a very, very important process in product development, in solving a problem, in solving an engineering problem, or solving any problem, whether it's a business problem, right? So to start thinking about ideation, I want to first take you guys through what do we go through when we actually build a product, right? If you actually look at the different expression on the faces here in the screen that I have today, you can look at the different emotions that are there or the different emoticons that are there in each of these different little smileys that I have here, right? So whenever we're trying to solve a problem, right, whether it's in product development, coding, or in real life, I think the screen is kind of representative of the different kind of emotions that we go through when we're trying to solve a very hard problem. Right, there are a lot of diverse emotions that we go through. So the reason why a lot of us always go through a lot of, let's say, diverse emotions when we're problem solving is probably because we've not actually gone through the correct steps of solving a problem. Design is not by accident, right? You can't invent something brilliant just by accident. You can actually, innovate and invent and build something really, really awesome by actually just following a process, right? And this process is called design thinking. So today I'm going to give you some shortcuts and some hacks in terms of how you could apply certain very, very important processes, which are a part of the larger process of design thinking, to solve the problems that you have for your hackathon today. So if you really think of, design thinking, right? What is actually design thinking? Design thinking process where you put the customer in the center of a decision making. Now, you've all been given several problem statements to solve in COVID-19. So the first thing that I want all of you to think about is when you're actually looking at how do you, design the product and different features and solve the problem and the different problem statements that you've been given today. I want you to put the customer or the end user at the center of decision making. And that's exactly what design thinking is all about, where you understand, observe, understand the point of view of a customer, then you ideate after understanding, observing, right? And getting the customer's point of view. Then you create a prototype, an MVP, and then you test your product. So that's the process of design thinking, which first starts with understanding what is the that a customer is, observing how he does the things, the way he's doing things currently, why he's facing those problems, trying to get his point of view, to understand the emotions behind it, and 10, 20, 30 rapid solutions to solve this problem. Ideation. So I'm going to play a quick video. So let me know if you guys have any difficulty in listening to the audio. So this was an example of a very interesting use of innovation during COVID-19, right? This is a drone built by my friend Farhan. And this was a pizza delivery that he did in Bombay maybe about 2 to 3 years ago when he built this drone to demonstrate what are the different ways you could use drones, right? And this becomes pretty relevant in today's context because, we have COVID-19 as a situation where, human contact needs to be minimized and so we need to have social distancing. So how do we solve a lot of our logistical problems today, when we have to keep social distancing, when there has to be minimal human contact, right? And drones are a very innovative solution which can solve multiple problems during COVID-19. It could be to deliver medicines, deliver food, it could be to deliver multiple things. It could be, used to check on a patient. So there are multiple ways you could use drones to solve problems during COVID. So I wanted to share this video with you to understand how I went through this process next few days. I don't want you to limit yourself in terms of what you think of an idea to solve the problem using technology, right? You're creating this code, you're creating a small product, right? Or this mini hack. Explore your mind. There's nothing called a good or bad idea during ideation, and it's better to have more ideas, as many ideas as possible when you're ideating, rather than trying to say I'll have 4 and I'll immediately shortlisted to 1, right? So I wanted to kind of give you an idea to kind of open your mind about innovation. So, design thinking is a very, very, much more longer process. There's a process within design thinking which we call lean startup, and that's something that's going to be very useful when you're ideating for the hackathon, right? So, lean startup is a process or an approach which we use, which is based on design thinking, where what do? We learn, we ideate, we build, we code, we measure, we analyze the data. Again, we learn, we ideate, we build, we code, we measure. So if you just remember this quick hack when you're going through the different kinds of problem statements when you're sitting down in your group and ideating, just think of this process, right? To start to build the first MVP. Start with coming up with a MVP which is small, and keep getting feedback from the users. Keep testing it with your mentors in the program, keep testing it amongst yourself as teammates, keep testing it and keep making incremental changes after you get users feedback, right? And if there's initially, when you come up with an MVP, if there's immediate rejection, then you can pivot very fast. If you spend the entire, let's say, 80% of your time frame just ideating, right, without getting to the MVP, and when you have very little time left when you need to submit the results, if you then decide, then you see that you have to make a drastic change to the way you have really designed the solution, then you may not have enough time to make that change. Which is why it's very important when you're going through a codeathon, a hackathon, to ensure that you keep the process very lean. Learn, ideate, build, code, measure, get data, and keep repeating that process as many times as possible. So we call this the double diamond process, right? In terms of problem solving, right? So the first, this is very important when you look at ideating. So before you get to ideation, you need to follow 2 important things. You need to do research. Now, if you have been given problem statements to solve using technology, specifically in relation to COVID-19, you need to do research on who is going to be the user of this product, right? Who is going to use this solution? What is his current pain point, and how are you going to solve it? Then you need to look at what are the insights, right? What does your customer need? What does your customer feel? Right? How does he feel without the solution? How will he feel with the solution? Right? So these are the kind of emotion-based insights that you need to understand about your customer base. Right? Once you have this information in space with you, then you ideate and you brainstorm. And once you ideate and brainstorm, then you come up with specific solutions and prototypes. So don't jump into ideation right away. Discover, define, and then ideate, and then develop, and then deliver. And this is an iterative process, right? So one of the things that happens during ideation, if you don't follow this process, right? This video will kind of tell you what happens when you just keep focusing on one thing and you don't open your mind and expand.
This is an awareness test. How many parties does the team in white make? Go! answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
So did anyone notice the moonwalking bear, right? Everyone was focused on counting how many boys and girls were playing basketball with a white t-shirt, that most people would end up missing the moonwalking bear. So this is exactly what we mean by you need to be aware, right? When you're ideating, you need to be aware when you're building a product, right? You need to be so aware, you need to open your mind. You cannot, that's why you should not limit yourself to one particular direction at the very early stage of ideating and and prototyping. You need to keep your mind open, because you could miss a very important detail which actually might become really important to your product, and it may also end up resulting in the failure of your product in the future. So make sure that you're aware, make sure that you're keeping the entire process open to ideas. There's nothing called a bad idea. When you ideate, it's okay to have 25 ideas instead of 2 good ideas that you think you spend the entire time. It's better to have 25 ideas to start with, right? Here, if quantity is more important than quality at the time of ideation. It's too early to bring it down to quality at the time of ideation. So what do you mean by empathize, right? So I've been telling you that before you ideate, you need to empathize, you need to understand what's happening about your customer. It's basically not just looking at what the user says or he does, but try to understand what he thinks and he feels, right? So empathizing means that it's a non-judgmental way to understand your user at 2 levels: what he's saying, what he's doing, and what he's thinking and what he's feeling. So you need to understand all of this before you ideation. So the first thing all of you would do is first have a discussion, right? When you form your teams, or whether you're doing this individually, then you need to think through this yourself. If you think as a team, sit down and talk about who your user is. Talk about what is his point, why does he have this pain point, and then try to try to do a role play. If the rules of the hackathon will not actually allow you to access real interviews, then you can do the process of role, where you can try to be in the shoes of the other person, and when you do this role play, you'll be able to then when you do this question and answer, where one plays the customer and the other one plays the person building the product asking these questions, when you're in the R&D phase, then you can really try to understand what the person's feeling, right? What is his pain point? What is he saying? What is he thinking? And for you to really empathize, to be able to successfully start the ideation phase, you need to be able to empathize and have enough research around your user and the problem, so that you can. So without preparation, you cannot ideate. Always be prepared when you go into an ideation session. That's the biggest advice that I can give everyone, right? When you going to sit with your teammates and ideate, make sure that you had time to think about all of this and you're prepared when you're ideating. Like, what do you mean by empathize? For example, Credit Watch, right? What do? We help people who normally don't qualify for credit. We look at alternative data about them and help them, build a better profile, digital profile, so that banks may find it riskier to lend to them. So if I had to look at an empathy map for a user, let's say for a particular person who could potentially benefit from Credit Watch, then I would look at a person called Harish, right? Who is a person who owns a small business, and he's finding it difficult to get a bank loan. Right? That's his problem. Why is he finding it difficult to get a bank loan? Because it's a very long and uncertain process. What's the root cause? What is he really, why do you think that it's a very long process? Why, right? You ask him what he's thinking, right? Not just what's the problem. Problem is long and uncertain, but what is he thinking? What's the root cause? He thinks it's a very daunting task, filling 30, 40 different kinds of documents and submitting so much of information. He feels he's not sophisticated enough to be able to handle this, right? And how does it make this small business owner feel? He feels worried and helpless because he needs money to be able to run his business, and if he's not able to really get command over the process of getting a loan, then he feels helpless. Right? So when you actually try to empathize with a customer, these are the different levels at which you need to understand the kind of problems that they face. So let's get to ideation, right? Now I've given you a little bit of insight of what you need to do before you get to the stage of ideation. And ideation is actually what the workshop's all about today. But I wanted to kind of give a quick recap to you about what you need to do before you start ideating. And that was a process, right? Understand, research, empathize, right? Make questions, get the point of view of a customer. Then you start ideating. Now we get to ideating. So in an ideation workshop, there's nothing called, good idea or a bad idea. All ideas are worthy, right? So the question is, during ideation, don't limit yourself. For example, you guys could be spending, let's say, 2 hours on ideating, and you may only come up with 4 or 5 good ideas if you look at the ideation curve that I have on the screen today. And you may be thinking, oh, have you spent so much time on this? And all I've got is like 5 brilliant ideas. I think they're done. You actually may not be. Because when you're ideating, right, there could be a point when you could hit a wall, right? And that is the time you shouldn't stop. Because unless and until you have 25 different ideas out there, you've not really completed your ideation session, right? So there could be a lull. But after that, there would be a point when if you don't give up, you would come up with another 20, 30, 40 different bright ideas. So remember when you're ideating that don't stop with the first 5. Even if you feel like you've hit a brick wall, push yourself and keep thinking, keep ideating until you get to 30 to 40 different brilliant ideas, right? And that's kind of how you need to look at ideation, right? So there are 4 golden rules when you're ideating. Right? Don't be judgmental, either with your teammates or yourself. There's nothing called a bad idea. Right? When you're presenting something in a group now during the hackathon, somebody else may say, no, I don't think it's a good idea. Like, it's okay. Don't urge everybody not to kill others' ideas at the idea phase. Let ideas flow. Right? So first rule, there are no bad ideas. Second rule is you need to capture everything. Let's say you guys are having a 2-hour discussion on ideating. You come up with a solution or a 1-hour discussion or whatever time frame, right? You need to ensure that every time someone comes up with an idea, immediately put a post-it and stick it on the wall or make a note of it. It's not like you should have a 30, 40-minute discussion and then down notes. Because what will happen in that process is you may miss 1 or 2 important ideas because it's not possible for you to remember all of them. So, every time someone is ideating, someone should be immediately copying what they're saying and putting it on a wall. Let's say that you're ideating now virtually because of COVID, right? If you're doing Codeathon as a group, then you would be ideating and you'd all be in your respective homes. So there are different tools which I'll talk about during the end of my presentation that you can use to create digital post-its and digital whiteboards. And I suggest that if you're ideating digitally, you use them because it's extremely important to be visual when you're ideating. Right? And do something called hybrid brainstorming, which means ideate in your head yourself first. Analyze all the research, analyze all of the point of views, and then ideate and come up with ideas yourself, and then ideate in the group. It's very important to do hybrid brainstorming. It's important to ideate yourself, have some ideas, and then ideate as a group, okay? And then quantity over quality, which means that, you should definitely have more ideas rather than thinking you have 6 brilliant ideas, right? Don't be selective during a creative exercise. So let's say that, it seems like what I've told you seems to be a very cumbersome process. What do you do when you're like really pressed for time? Right? So I'll give you a simple hack. So how do you compress all of that I told you to meet a time, deadline to do something like a hackathon or a codeathon, right? So there are a lot of simple hacks to follow the exact same process, even during hackathons and codeathons, and still get similar results. One of them is called rapid ideation. So when you do rapid ideation, when you start a project, you should think broadly and loosely. So you should just watch this video.
What
Whenever starting a project, I always encourage people to really think broadly and loosely. I like to do this is sketching on a small piece of paper with a very large, thick pen. And when I do this, I try and get big ideas down on paper. I'm not focused on details. I'm just thinking about what is the large gesture. When you think about the large gesture first, and then you move these sketches into an actual nice marker rendering, you have the proportions figured out, and then you can start focusing much more on details. By going through this exercise, you come up with a lot of ideas very quickly, which allows you to really evaluate if the one you originally had was correct. Once you have all your ideas captured and you think you've exhausted all of your creativity, I always love to post these up on the wall, kind of organize them, gut check which ones are great, which ones are not working as well, and use those to either take one idea forward or multiple ideas forward, or take the best aspects of each, push them into one Frankenstein concept, and then move into a more intense marker render.
So how do you apply rapid ideation to a technology process? So you would then have to start looking at your MVP very broadly and loosely, instead of starting to focus on features right in the beginning. When you do your first round of ideation, focus more on the MVP or the minimum viable product that your end user would be using, rather than focusing on all the features in the beginning. So that's how you apply rapid ideation techniques to a hackathon or a codeathon. Start thinking broadly on the overall solution that you're going to give to your end customer first, and then you can start, fine-tuning it in the second or third iteration with the useful features. Right? That then you can keep adding features and features, one on top of the other, when I keep reiterating the process over and over again. So what do you mean by rapid prototyping, right? So I would say that your first prototype should be a mock-up. It should be a storyboard. It's something that you should take a white piece of paper and you should be able to draw out what your product looks like, right? You should be able to draw out the solution. And wireframing is the first, recommended prototype when you're building a technology product. Don't go ahead and code something and that should not be your MVP. The first prototype should actually be you can take a white sheet of paper, take a sketch pen and draw it out, right? Or you use an electronic marker, take a whiteboard and draw it out. Prepare a storyboard, prepare the journey of your customer, right? Prepare the process. And that should be your first prototype when you're ideating to solve a technology problem. Because what's the advantage of prototyping this? Ideating, you can fail fast. You can quickly say, hey, I can see these are the problems when you evaluate your solution. You can take a fresh piece of paper and redo the drawing and say, hey, actually, if I design the product with this workflow, it might work better because these were the top 2 or 3 problems with my previous one. So it's very, very important to use mock-ups and storyboards to prototype really fast when you get to your MVP. And it's very important to keep looking at your prototype, going back to ideation, and if necessary, even going back to empathizing again with the customer, researching a little more about the customer, and then again ideating again and going back to another prototype. It should be a very, very quick, rapid process, right? So what happens when you prototype? When you create this first, drawing or a mock-up or a wireframe on this piece of paper or on a whiteboard, you need to do a role play very quickly. Have someone play the customer, right, in your team, and then have them go through the solution and understand what are the problems, right? Because if this way of user validation really helps you understand to tell you if you're very early or tell you if you're wrong very early. Right? And that is very, very important. User validation, that when you prototype, make sure that someone does a role play and actually plays the role of the user. And then once you go through the entire process with them, let's say that it's an app that you're building for COVID, make them actually go through those steps with someone playing the customer and see what are the hitches that happens with the way you adopted the solution. So what does MVP really mean? Right, and this is extremely important, right? This is where most of the mistakes are made. If you're trying to build a car, your wheel is not your MVP, right? So if you're trying to build a car, a skateboard is an MVP. MVP is the first usable version for a customer. So if your end goal is to build a car, can a wheel be used by a customer? No. But a customer right now thinks that it's too, let's say if a customer, you're solving a transport problem. What is this thing that if he walks distances, it's really tiring, it takes a long time, and he really cannot get to the place he wants to or go to long distances. Now, it may take you a while to get to a car, but you can immediately give him a skateboard, right? That's so much easier. You can maybe make a skateboard in a day, and that will solve his problem. So that is the concept of an MVP. Is giving something immediately usable to the customer. So once your customer uses the skateboard and you do validation, you will know that maybe the skateboard needed a handle because he's not able to balance himself, right? So then you give him a skateboard with a handle like a scooter, right? These are very common now, these kind of scooters, to kind of especially get around in large campuses in cities like, cities like Singapore and all that, where where there's a lot of emphasis on, and being environment friendly. People use a lot of these scooters, right? So then let's say the scooters can only cover a certain distance. There would be a limitation. Then you would build him a cycle. Right, again, cycle will solve a problem. He'll get to a longer distance. Then you build him a motorcycle, and then you finally build him a car. So that's the concept of an MVP. That every iteration that you do for the customer when you're building your product should be immediately be able to, in some way, small way, solve that problem. If it cannot solve that problem, then it's not an MVP. So just remember that when you're prototyping. So how do you identify what are the features for an MVP? How do you prioritize your ideas, right, when you're ideating, right? So then when I'm building an MVP, I would usually, organize myself like this, as, look at the screen really carefully. I would look at what are the features that I can build for an MVP that are most impactful and easy to implement. What is the most trendy? What's more important is what is the thing that will actually solve the problem of the customer the most? And what is the easiest, what is the low-hanging fruit? I would go with using that, building that feature first, right? The second thing is user requests. When you're doing this validation with your customers, the role play, they may be giving you some requests or suggestions. The next important thing that I use after, in terms of feature prioritization is a user request, right? That is most important. And the third one is analogy. Suppose you can look at, other parallel businesses, right, who using technology. If they have used some features that have been extremely successful, which can be applied to our problem today, right? For example, you're building an app, right, in terms of sign-on. You know that, you have this single sign-on, Google authentication, all of that. That's pretty applied to other use cases and are very relevant here today. There's no need to reinvent that for yourself. You can just get a plugin and use that feature, right? So that's kind of how you prioritize your features, right? It's going to be a first top 3 ones are what's more impactful and low-hanging fruit. Second is going in your use your discover phase. This is where your play. And these would be the top features that you would look at when you prioritize, when you're ideating. Then you can start looking at what's trendy, right? Also start with what, features that serve very early adopters. For example, if you look at who were the first users of Facebook, they were college students. And who are the users of Facebook today? Pretty much anyone in the planet. So when Facebook had its first version of what it was, the features were very specific for college students, right? All of the features catered to that one market. And after that, as Facebook started expanding the user demographic, now Facebook has a lot of diverse features for multiple user groups. So always, also another way to look at what is a feature to prioritize would be what would be your early adopters? Who are the people who are likely to use your product first, and what would be relevant to them, right? And then you should always learn to segregate and prioritize and be selective about must-have versus nice-to-have. You can build hundreds of nice features in a product. But when you're really building a minimum viable product, nice to have is not necessary at all. What you should have in it is a must have, right? Always remember that it's always important when you're building an MVP, when you're ideating, to prioritize your ideas towards must have and not nice to haves. So here's another simple hack, right? I mean, let's say that you only have 30 minutes to prototype. You're doing a very rapid hackathon. How do you really, how do you really prioritize, right? You've had, you can, take a piece of paper. You can then put a box of your top ideas. And now here the six ideas are just representative. Ideally you should have 10 ideas, 15, 20 ideas, right? And always put why under that, right? Why this idea, why that idea, and then you filter it down to your top 3 or 6 ideas from that, right? So that is a simple hack, that find 6 ideas or 9 ideas or 12 or 15 ideas that fit a predefined criteria, and then choose your top favorite ideas. Even when you have a very short period of time, right? These are some of the simple. You should create something called an idea shopping cart. You can just draw it out on a whiteboard. You can do it on a piece of paper, but that way you can prioritize. And ideally, this idea shopping cart will be most useful towards the end of the Codeathon, because in the beginning of the Codeathon, don't make your 25 or 15 to 6 when you have time. But when you're getting more towards a crunch time, right, towards the end, when you're doing a 3rd iteration, 4th iteration, right, when you're getting closer to your finish, you don't have time then to look at 25 things. Then you can use these simple, useful hacks to kind of get more to the finish line. Okay. So this is a very successful framework that you need to look at to build a good solution. One is user desirability. If something that you're building, the user does not find, does not like, there's no point doing it. Second is business viability. If you spend 20 rupees building a product that you can only make 1 rupee out of, what is the point? So, if AI may not be the solution for everything. So then, using AI, using these GPU processors and all of the AWS infrastructure might be very expensive, and it may not even be viable for your solution, right? So always look at business viability. That how much money do you think I can get from making this product? And all this that I'm investing in it, is it really viable? So sometimes it's important to ensure that there's technological feasibility, that, okay, it may work, something may work now on 4 things, this model. But will this model really work on 1,000 or 100,000? So you have to look at technological feasibility. Then you have to look at innovators' reliability, which means that there should be something different about yourself, which you need to differentiate yourself from others. If your solution is exactly what somebody else has, then it becomes difficult. And from a hackathon's perspective, I don't know if there's enough time to get to innovators' reliability. But if you guys are going to be budding entrepreneurs tomorrow, this is something you really need to remember, that the key for you to have a very successful solution tomorrow as an entrepreneur, to build a solution, is to ensure that you differentiate yourself from others. And it should be a clear differentiation. So, these were simple hacks, right? And this is kind of how we build product at CrediWatch, right? We are like about a 3.5-year-old organization. We started this with, me and my co-founder and 3 interns. And 3.5 years down the line, we are about 60 of us. We have offices in 2 countries. In 2 cities. And we have over 20 to 30 paying customers, right? How did we get there? And in terms of my own background, let me tell you, I'm not an engineer, and I don't have a technological background. I do have a co-founder who has a technological background. But the point is, whether you have a technological background or not, you can still build a technology product if you follow the process of innovation, right? So, and as long as you find a good tech co-founder who's going to be able to implement this idea, and if you have something you bring to the table, like understanding the problem statement really well, then I would tell all the women out there that, you should still go ahead and if you have a dream or a passion, you should follow it. Right? And what are the most important things when you build a product? Always make sure you take feedback and you continuously improve it. Even at a hackathon, keep talking to your mentors, keep talking to the organizers who keep giving you feedback. There are people out there to help you. All right, there will be people assigned to help you. Keep getting feedback from them. Keep doing role play, and keep getting feedback from your potential customers. Right? Drive the conversation. You could even during a hackathon, you could use a small Google survey form to get feedback. Right? Things like that. And then start looking at identifying your customer needs. Face-to-face interviews are important, which is why I said role play is important. You could even request for some of your mentors to play the role of a customer, to then try to understand what the problem statement is. Make sure you launch a basic product with functional features. Keep testing them in beta environment, and keep identifying features and adding features that resonates with your user base. Right? Make sure that you enable users to get maximum information by using product brochures, videos, and social medias to ease your users to understand, to use your product, and to make it very simple for them, right? These are some of the basic 101s when you're building a product. And here are some tips and tools you could use during the hackathon, right? You can use Google Meet, Zoom, or any other collaborative tool to talk to your teammates if you're all there, in different places when you're ideating. You can use Google Forms, where you could send out surveys, questionnaires to collect insights. You can use Google Jamboard, which is like a digital post-it, which you can create during, like I talked about, if you can't physically be in a room where you can put post-its on a whiteboard, you can actually use a Jamboard, right? You can use the Board of Innovation concept card, right? Just Google Board of Innovation. They have a lot of resources you could download and a lot of shortcuts and hacks that will kind of tell you how to ideate. You could use the Board of Innovation idea shopping cart. I just discussed that in one of my slides for validating your idea. There are a lot of prototyping wireframing technologies available. One is Balsamic, which is what we use at CrediWatch, where you can actually draw out the entire solution, the app, or whatever or the workflow, whatever you're doing, or the front end, to kind of really understand whether what you're doing solves the problem of the user. And you can use Google Sheets through a lot of database management to manage the entire process of from design thinking to ideation to prototyping, right, and testing. And these are the tools that you could use during a hackathon that would really help you, quickly, get MVP really fast and iterate. So that's all I have, and all the best. And let me know if you guys have any questions.
Thanks a lot, Meghna. It was really a wonderful session. So now we can go for Q&A. We don't have any questions actually. So it was really a wonderful presentation. So people are, pretty much clear about the ideation part now. We can go for Q&A. All right then. We don't have any questions. Maggie, you wanna maybe tell them about the GHCI stuff, or maybe you can wrap this
I
up.
just want to tell you that
Can you guys
please
hear?
feel free and ask anything. This is your forum. We're doing this for you, so feel free to ask any kind of questions. There is no dumb question. There is no stupid question. Okay, a question is a question. It always opens up more knowledge, and it's Shubham, Meghna,
Yeah.
and me. So feel free. But if something else comes up in your mind, you can also drop a mail to us and we'll be happy to respond to that, either about the competition itself, how is it conducted, what are the stages, what are the timelines, anything you might have, you can reach out. Or if you want questions, if you have any questions on Meghna's content, please feel free to reach out. We are here to help. We want to make sure you get the best support possible to be able to do really well in this Codeathon.
So some people, I think around 4:15 had a little bit of a voice lag. I'm not sure if everyone was able to hear everything clearly. That's what the live comments say.
Yeah, that was for I guess 1 or 2 minute, Meghna. Like even I was there, so
Okay.
that was not an issue. Yeah.
There's one question. In what form do we have to submit the idea? Live comments say.
Maggie can answer this maybe.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, Shubham.
Yeah, so it's in what form we have to submit the idea.
So the ideas can be submitted directly on the Skillenza platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be a Word doc, and maybe we can share some link also with you for that. Also, Garima has one question, Maggie. How do you suggest we plan our idea in the terms of timeline?
So that's what I told you, right? Look at how do you get to the minimum viable product, right? All of them would be would be ideating to find some solve some problems with respect to COVID, right? That's the essence of the entire hackathon here or the Codeathon. So you will have to kind of figure out what is it that really moves you, right? As an entrepreneur, when you're wanting to solve a problem, right? Why did I decide to start Watch? It's because I really had passion to solve something and help people get access to finance. So now, if you look at the framework that's given to you in the hackathon and the codeathon, you have to look at what you think would really move you, right? And that's how you start conceptualizing the idea, right? And that's what I would suggest. And how do you plan it? You'll have to be really planned and follow the process that I've given you. You will have to first do research about the ideas, right? That's the first thing. Ask questions, get a point of view of the customer, and then you ideate. And how do you plan? If you're at the beginning, I would suggest spending at least a few hours. If you're at the end of it, before your deadline, do the ideation. But in the beginning, I suggest you spend the ideation.
And if I could add, that's a very good point, Meghna, what you brought up, what really moves you, yes. And we have put a theme in such a way that you can draw from your own life examples. We are talking about the current COVID situation. What does it mean to you as a student? And then when we talk of student, just be inclusive. Think of students with different abilities, who would have gained from an in-person studying and now they're moved to online. What kind of access issues people have due to vernacular languages? Is language a problem? And some of you might find it easier to study with others rather than do this one-on-one learning. Is that becoming an issue? So just think of all of that. And if you had to design a system for you to excel in this kind of a scenario, what would you do? So what is it you're really feeling acute as a problem? And use that. Timeline wise, yeah, we have a couple of more weeks for you to submit your ideas. So Meghna has given you a lot of wonderful techniques as to how you can brainstorm, talk to each other, come up with different kind of ideas, see what works. Of course, every idea has to be technically viable. So during a brainstorm, make sure you talk about those as well before you put it across to the competition.
So someone has asked whether it's necessary to be in a team after submitting or whether they can be individuals. This is more for the organizers.
You can be an individual too, if that works. We've seen that teams are better at supporting each other, pulling the weight along if one person is busy or down with something else. So we encourage you to form teams, but if you want to do it alone, that's fine as well.
There's also something on, do they have to work on ideas only relating to COVID or they can work on something else? I guess that's for you also, again.
Yeah.
In terms of framework of hackathon and code.
The way looking at innovative solutions, especially with student life and education, COVID has just given us a convenient challenge for us to work on. So if you're seeing some long-standing problem that existed even before COVID, and if you want to provide a solution for it, you're welcome to do that. As long as the idea is really strong and is adding value, we'll be open to evaluating it and picking it up.
I think that was it.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, Meghna, and thanks a lot, Maggie, for joining us. And I really hope it was a wonderful session for an informative session for our viewers too. Okay. All right then.
Thanks, everyone. We look forward to hearing from all of you soon with your ideas. And
I'll send this presentation
from Anita to you, Meghna, for facilitating this.
I mean, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to all the young students. I always enjoy that. I do ideation sessions with kindergarten students, middle school students, and now these are college students. So it's quite exciting to talk to different age groups and kind of inspire them to become entrepreneurs. And I really enjoy doing that. So thanks for inviting me to be a part of the session.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'll share the presentation with you guys. You can share it with everybody else.
Sure.
The PPT. Yeah.
Awesome.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. All right then. Bye-bye.
Bye.